All right. Got Todd Poquette on the Do Hard Things podcast and excited to have you. Thanks for hopping on.
Hey, thanks for reaching out and asking me to get on.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to hearing your story. Before we get there, I'd love to give some people context for who you are. And the best way I do that, I think, is asking the question, when people ask you what you do, how do you answer that?
So my response is that I'm the director of adventure for 906 Adventure Team. And then the next question is, well, what's the director of adventure? And it's funny because, then my response is, well, I have no idea. I made that up. But seriously, in all seriousness, what really the way I view myself and my role as a director of adventure is I'm a facilitator. Okay. I think I've kind of come to this place in my life where in a number of roles, I really look at myself just purely as facilitating certain results. If you look at the definition, I actually wrote it down just so I could hit it accurately. Facilitate someone who helps bring about an outcome such as learning, productivity, or communication by providing indirect or unobtrusive assistance, guidance, or supervision. And I really think through our nonprofit and through the events and the experiences that we create, what we're doing is, what I should say is I'm trying to help facilitate development of a community through experiences that are designed to break their attachment to everything that prevents us from coming together.
What are some of the things that prevent coming together?
Well, we see it every day right now, right? I think our labels, I think the world is full of ways that we might label one another. Even something as simple as, people will say, oh, you're that bike guy. Well, okay. So, as a cyclist, automatically I am thought to be at odds with automobile operators or hikers, walkers, you know what I mean? We have the way we cling to definitions of our labels, I think is a detriment for us. So that's why through these experiences we create, whether it's through youth programming for kids or through the national scale events that we run, we're trying to break those down. And the way we do it is by creating hardship and force people to work together.
Yeah. Not many other tools out there that are as effective as hardship, I think. Have you guys experimented with other ways to do it and just like, nope, this is it? Or we were all in on hardship from the beginning?
Yeah, always all in on hardship. Probably because, just in my life experience, that has been my greatest teacher, is just really screwing stuff up and learning from it and being like, okay, we're not going to do that again.
Yeah.
But the example is that we say this so Margie Gesick, Margie is Marji, Gesick is Gesick. That is a 100-mile mountain bike / running endurance event we run through 906 Adventure Team. And the kind of the inside joke, but it's not a joke, is this event was identified 5 years ago by Jeremiah Bishop in his own words, saying he thinks it's the hardest single-day mountain bike event in the country. And this is a guy who's raced all over the world.
Yeah.
If there's hard shit to do on a bike, he's done it probably.
Right.
Yeah. So the joke is, because it is hard, this event is literally been designed to break you. But we always say how once you get into the Margie, nobody's talking about their politics. There's no party lines. There's all this stuff that we get entangled on that divides us. When you get punched in the face and the guy next to you is getting punched in the face, you figure out how to work together real fast.
Yeah, no kidding. I was talking to his name's Steve Magnus. He wrote a book called Do Hard Things, and he's a performance coach. Anyways, I was talking to him on the podcast, and he was saying there's some really interesting studies about runners that'll be down at the bottom of a hill. And if they're down there by themselves, they see the hill and it just looks too difficult to run up the hill. But if you put them down there with other people, the hill and the difficulty of it didn't change, but their perspective of it changes pretty dramatically because they're with people. facing it together. Like there's something about the difficulty like that just binds people. You need it. So
It does. Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say, one of the other unique things that we do at the events is we sort of downplay the podium, and we've sort of leveled the playing field, saying, in the same respect that the elites, the Jeremiah Bishops, and those men and women operate at the highest of highest levels, and that's incredibly impressive and worthy of our respect. In the same way, that man or that woman who stays out on the course for 25 hours, knowing when they get to the finish line, the only people that will be there is like me, my wife, 5 volunteers, and their husband or wife.
Right.
That takes, I'll tell you what, man, that takes some resolve and some grittiness to stay out there.
Yeah, no kidding. So how many times have you done it yourself, I'm guessing? And yes. What, pick like 3 words to describe it that aren't just saying it's hard. Like give people a little context, insider view on the experience that you guys have created.
3 words. Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely fucking relentless.
So why? Is it hills? Is it mud? Is it rain?
Yes,
what is it?
The Margie, we are super blessed in Marquette County to have what I would call a one-of-a-kind course. From start to finish, it's all uphill. And we did that on purpose. Just so we could say it was all uphill.
Yeah.
But the thing with Marquette County is that, you're not going to get hit with a 10-mile climb like you might out west.
Right.
Because, when you do the 10-mile climb out west, then after that, you've got a 10-mile descent. Here, it's like you have for 100 miles, these short, bursty, rock-strewn, boulder-ridden, root-infested climbs. It's like you got to pin it as though you're doing an interval, for 5 minutes. And then when you get to the top of that climb, you're going down again, a brutal, rock-strewn, rooty, like Carrie Laurie, who's a very well-known endurance event in the country, said there are no free miles in this event. Meaning, even when you're going downhill, you're getting your ass kicked. And that is completely true. I mean, hell, the DNF rate since 2015 on the 100-mile run, is 80%.
Are you serious?
I'm not kidding. 80% of the people who show up never see the finish line.
And how many people are doing it in a given year?
Well, on the running side, this year, I think we sent out, I'm going to say 50 100-mile runners. Actually, this year we had our best finish rate ever. I think 30% finished. The bikers, the total event this year was 1,300 people. So it's very bike heavy. The 100-mile runners start on Friday, and then the 100-mile bikers and everybody else starts Saturday morning. And everybody's got to be done by Sunday morning at 8:30 a.m.
Okay.
So if you're 5 miles from the finish line and you've been out there 25 hours, at 8:30, we're packing up.
Yeah. Finish on your own.
Yeah. I mean, if you've come that far, you just
right. Yeah, it doesn't matter how long it takes you at that point.
Exactly.
So talk about how you got involved in all of this. Like, it's an interesting job to have and an interesting organization to be a part of. But what was your trajectory to get to this point?
Well, I did a variety of things professionally. I've done everything from, a short order cook to a delivery driver for Cisco, not the tech company, the worldwide food distributor.
Yeah.
And I worked with Cisco from the very beginning, entry-level position of being a part-time driver, culminating with being a district sales manager, and then deciding at 38, it's like, well, is this what I want for the rest of my life? Now let's go try something else. I've worked in retail, which, retail is really a great place to learn how to interact with people and just interface with the public. Love that job. I've done a lot of really fun stuff. I've done a lot of really shitty stuff, but I always found a way to enjoy it. And when I left the corporate world, it was really because I realized at, nearly 40 that I'm going to work 80 hours a week, no matter what I do, because it's just how I'm wired.
Yeah.
And when I say that, like, I'm not trying to glamorize, working that much, because I actually enjoy whatever I'm doing. I enjoy it. So even when I am working, no matter how good or bad it is, I don't know. I guess I'm just weird.
You're wired to work.
I just like doing it, So I ended up leaving Cisco because I thought, well, maybe my time's better spent on things impacting the community. And I ended up going to work for a restaurant group that happened to be in my district, which was one of our largest accounts. I had a good rapport with the owner and went to work with them. I think I did that for 5 years. And during that 5-year period of time, I was also allocating some of my time to starting a nonprofit. Essentially, it was just, I wanted to volunteer outside of work. I wanted to give back to the community. But I approached, here's the thing, like, for people who are always looking for like their passion or their purpose, or trying to look for that thing that really lights them up and really just makes them want to get up every morning. I approached my volunteer gig with this nonprofit that I was creating with the same dedication and fervor that I approached my professional career. And in effect, what happened is being a really high performing volunteer turned into a job. And, it's interesting, I guess, to point that out, because I think that one way I could have gone at it, and I think that a lot of people go at volunteerism or volunteering is, and nothing wrong with this, but let's just call a spade a spade. I think they look at it as resume fodder.
Yeah.
Or as a way to get involved and then integrate with other members in the community to further whatever it is they do, whatever their profession is. A lot of sales folks that stumble into volunteerism, and there's a reason. Yeah, they stumble in. So that stuff looks good on resumes, and you know what? If that's what you're after, all the more power to you. But when I got into it, I think in reflection, and this is true yet today, I wasn't in it for that. I got into it for the kids and guys like me, women like me, just normal everyday people who didn't really have an opportunity or a cycling group that they could be part of, or a community group. I guess it's not even cycling, because we have cycling and running that's part of it, men, women, and children. So it was really just having a community that you aligned with. And that's always been the priority, is the people have always been the priority. And again, that's what took me down the path. And it just eventually turned into where I was sitting in, I think, 2018, got a great job with this restaurant group and this nonprofit that was demanding more time than I had to give. And I had to make a choice, and when I made the choice to leave that restaurant group, there wasn't even an approved salary from the board of directors.
Just like, this is what I'm doing. Here we go.
This is what I'm doing. Just going to jump and see where it goes. Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's interesting, that you're talking about the volunteer stuff, because I think it kind of gets at something that I came to realize 3 or 4 years ago, because I believe firmly that people do their best work and enjoy what they're doing the most when they have a mindset, not like, what can I get from this company or this employer, but what can I give? And I think, like, that's what you're talking about, right? Like, in the volunteering space, it turned into a job because it wasn't about what you could get from it, but what you could give. And like, that gets multiplied much more quickly. And it's kind of weird. It feels a little upside down and backwards that it would come back to you that way. Yeah. But I mean, I think it works that way all the time.
You nailed it. I love that. I mean, it is what it's all about. And I think even for people who maybe they don't go down a volunteer path and have it turn into a job, people who find a career and they're in that career based more off of what they can give than what they can get, they're highly successful.
Yeah.
Because I think, like you said, the universe has a way of paying it back to you. It doesn't make sense, but it seems to work.
Yeah, it's a little backwards, right? You're not being self-serving, and somehow it ends up serving you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think, it's upside down economy. But okay, so before I get to kind of the pivotal central question for the podcast, I wanted to ask a little bit more about the 906 adventure. So we talked about Margie Gessick, but what else do you guys do and put on that people probably, if they've never heard of it before, have no context for? Because that's kind of like the prime event, but there's more to it. So what else do you guys have going on?
Yeah, so there's three what I call productions that we put on that are really primary revenue generators for the organization. We do a lot of, we're a nonprofit, so we do a lot of grant work when we have equipment specific needs specific to our youth programs. So that's where we'll leverage grant writing. We've got a lot of great sponsors. We have a lot of great community partners. However, I think we might be a little different in that we don't spend quite as much time chasing money. And frankly, that's probably been in part because we've found a way to generate our own money. But that is nice because as a nonprofit, then we have some autonomy. We don't get beholden to, we had a situation last year where a sponsor was trying to sort of push their agenda onto us, and really unfairly, I do believe, and misplaced. So we don't have to deal with a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
Because we can generate our own income, which is really unique. So the three events would be Polar Roll. That is a winter fat bike / snowshoe adventure that happens in February. And our trail organizations here in Marquette County, the NTN, which is the No Cayman Trail Network, and RAMBA, which is the Range Area Mountain Bike Association, they are probably the premier fat bike trail / snowshoe trail grooming organizations in the country. They just do phenomenal work. They've been doing this for years. They have tested and refined equipment that is specifically meant to groom trails through the woods for bikes to ride throughout the winter. And you're familiar with Marquette, right?
Yeah. I mean, like to an extent. Yeah.
Marquette's known for a huge lake and snow.
Yeah.
If you take it to its rawest form. So great event. Some years it's great because the conditions are perfect. And then other years it is the most terrible thing that you'll ever do in your life. And
which is what I'm imagining. Yeah.
It can be really bad.
Yeah.
We talked about Margie Gessick. The other event we have, which runs in July every year, is called the Crusher. And I took gravel racing, I'll say in air quotes, gravel racing. I took that and turned it into what we call enhanced gravel, which means it's the worst gravel experience you're ever going to have. The UP, it does have some pockets of nice, traditional gravel roads, but honestly, it is, and it's unique, and this is why we love it. This is why the people who live here. Our roads are 2 tracks. They are Jeep trails. They are deer tracks, deer trails, game trails, and all of that stuff is part of the Crusher. And it takes you as deep into the backcountry of the UP as you're willing to go. And assuming you make it, eventually you come back.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It's phenomenal.
They do sound like they're geared to punish you a little bit.
Yeah, they are. All of them are designed to take people, even the enhanced gravel. Like there's a lot of what I would say what I would call psychological games being played. Okay. So typically enhanced is a big word right now, right? And it's in all sorts of industries. All of a sudden, if you go into the Holiday Inn, you don't just get housekeeping. Now they've got a sign on your bed that you're going to get enhanced housekeeping, which generally enhanced means that the product that you're about to enjoy is better than the average product of that nature that you would experience, right?
Right.
The mind game with Crusher is we don't tell people that we like terrible things. So enhanced gravel to us is bad times 2.
Yeah. Enhanced, it goes the wrong direction in most,
in a good way.
In a good way, right. Weird, flipped around,
right.
tornado kind of experience. Yeah. Well,
So,
and even just the description you said, like they can go out and if they come back, like psychological game in and of itself, that statement, good luck. I hope we see you again.
Yes. Good luck. Well, I mean, the whole ethos of the events is kind of our public statement. And this is whether it's Polar Oil Crusher or Margie Gessick. It's you are self-supported. You are on your own. A GPS is required. There are no signs. If you get into trouble, you'll need to call 911. That's basically the narrative. And then we give you a required gear list and we tell you do not show up or go into the course without this gear, because choosing to do so could carry negative consequences. And that is true. Really, keep in mind, again, these events, the Crusher, Margie cuts off at 25 hours. The Crusher cuts off at 36 hours. So you're going through one day, through the night, into the next day. And this is an experience, Dan, that a lot of people have never had in their life, where they've had to participate in an endurance event that's pushed them to their limit through day, through night, into the next day. And it's unbelievable what it does for people.
Yeah, it's reminding me a little bit. I talked to a guy named Mark Devine, who he does Navy SEAL training, and he has these like events that are designed as endurance that force you to your limit, where you need team to get through it. And the longest one, I think, is 50 hours, and you're awake the whole time, right? And you're getting water thrown in your face and crawling. It's just like what you would imagine a Navy SEAL training to be, but for 50 straight hours,
So his events or whatever he's doing there, who is signing up to do that? What's the person look like?
I didn't ask him that question. I've since looked at it in more detail, and it looks a lot like an average person who is desiring to like get out of a rut, essentially. Okay. So they have like a training program that you are supposed to go into and go through leading up to the event, because if you just try to tackle it without any kind of preparation, you won't be successful. And so they have scaled up versions. That's kind of the pinnacle. Yeah. That's
fantastic to hear, because the thing we hear at our events is that, like when we were at Margie Camp this year in June, it's a camp that we do to prepare them for Margie Gessick. So they come for the weekend, we get them ready, and then they come back in September and they try to finish. But we've had, the comment a lot of times we'll hear from people like at camp when you're just hanging out is they'll look around them at, this event that's been described as one of the hardest, if not the hardest, single day mountain bike events in the country. And they say, these are not your typical, elite level type A competitive cyclists and runners. Like you look around and it's just regular men and women with their families lining up to do this ridiculous task. And that's really, I think, what's made it all special is who's showing up. We're somehow talking regular people into showing up and towing the line.
Yeah. Well, there's something about it, right? Like, I think as a human, we want to see what we're capable of, but we almost it's why personal trainers exist, right? Like we need somebody to push us beyond our comfort level, because most people are not inherently capable of doing that on their own. And, those people probably don't need to come to the event, right? Like they're just going to go do that kind of crazy thing on their own. Whereas the person who would need the personal trainer, who needs somebody to push them, they got to sign up for something like this to get to that kind of a level of discomfort and difficulty.
Yeah. It was interesting. I don't know where you sit on this. So, but to your point, what you just said, doing hard things, like that as a mantra, you know, if you go to these type A super competitive folks, they don't need to be told or encouraged to do hard things. That's literally what they're wired to do, right?
Yeah.
So if you throw that message out to them, they're like, hell yes. Like, no,
let's do it. What's next?
Let's do it. So that's not an issue. So you got that group. They're already in before you've even suggested it. On the other end of the group, you have people who immediately, when they hear the suggestion of doing hard things, they have 10 reasons why they shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll probably come up with some arbitrary exception to the rule and argue it with you like they're a middle schooler, just to try to prove that doing hard things isn't always the right thing to do. So then it's like, all right, well, listen, if you're stuck on that end, okay, keep working on it. People in the middle, I think, to varying degrees, right? They will listen to the message. They're not all in right away, and they're not all out. You can talk them into it.
Yeah.
Right. So the doing hard things message, I think, for the people in the middle, that's where it's really, really powerful, because you coming in and sharing that suggestion and talking them into it is what moves them forward. I think conversely, for the people who are the adopters of doing hard things, the hard thing for that group is maintenance. The hard thing is actually taking a day off when that's the right thing to do.
Right.
So it's like doing hard things. And I've spent a lot of time with this, because I'm very much type A, and very much as soon as there's a suggestion to go do something ridiculous or dumb, I'm like, well, of course we're going to do that.
That sounds amazing. Yeah.
Right. But it's not always the right thing to do.
Right.
You know, if you're not physically there, or even if you're, you know, maybe your work situation, it isn't good time for that. If it isn't good time for the family, like those folks who are on the far end of the pointy spear need to realize that doing hard things sometimes means not doing hard things.
Right. That is the hard thing, is being still. And I'm kind of in that. This is totally like, there is much more extreme version of this that we're talking about. I'm in that though a little bit. And then like, I tore a little bit of my meniscus. And so I'm like very stagnant right now, and I'm wanting to push myself, and I have to not, or else I'm just going to be in this place even longer. And it's so hard to just like rein it in and let my body take care of itself. Because I like am wired to push it to the limit, see what I'm capable of, be exhausted and tired, and I can't. And so I totally, like, you're right. Like that is the group that's in that, let's just do the next hard thing. It's a really hard time being still, or like not doing a hard thing.
You got to know when to rein it in.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
on the meniscus, what's it look like for you? I mean, is there like a plan? Like, do you have a strategy to get back?
Yeah. So it was like 2.5 weeks ago now, and it's getting better pretty quick. And what I read and found is that the more you can kind of work it to the point where it's going to be sore in all the different ranges of motion, the better, because you get so much more blood flow in there, and that's how it heals. And so I've been trying just as much as possible to like push it right up to the edge, but not over push it. If like where I think the edge is not actually the right edge. Like the edge is before that. It's like a guardrail, right? Like where's the guardrail? Don't hit the guardrail, you know? So that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to give myself like 6 to 8 weeks before I try to go back, because I was playing basketball, to go back to like that kind of a activity again. But I'm feeling encouraged, so we'll see.
Sorry, you've got me wondering now. Endurance wise, are you in the endurance sports, or like what are you active in? You said basketball.
Basketball is the main thing. So I mean, I've got 4 little kids right now. So back to your point, like doing the things I used to do, it's not a wise thing right now, because my wife, you know, she's like, I need you at home. And so I don't do nearly as much, but I used to be doing a lot more of the like backpacking and outdoor kind of excursion type stuff. Like that's what I spent most of my young adult life pursuing. I have lots of dreams, of long through hikes or like I have my big one is the Pacific Coast. I'm out here in Washington State, grew up in California, but traversing the Pacific, like those 3 states in all the different means of transportation. So like trying to figure out how to get that done. But, that's going to be 20 years from now or when my kids get old enough to do it with me or something.
Yeah.
So, but
Awesome.
those are the things I get excited about.
Yeah.
So,
How old are the kids? What's the age range?
yeah, my oldest is 5.5. And then one's about to be 4, one just turned 2, and then one's 4 months old. So
Young.
yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of work right now, but everybody tells me it gets better. So I'm choosing to believe it.
Oh, it does. Yeah, there's no doubt.
Yeah. So anyways, yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Well, now I want to ask you the prime question for the podcast and the purpose of this, which is you have a story of a difficult thing you've been through and that you've grown from. And there's somebody listening to this that's in the middle of a hard season right now, and they need some perspective and they need some hope. And that's why we asked the question. So question is, what's the hardest thing in your life that you wouldn't take back?
Well, that was a tough one. So I had mentioned I worked for Cisco.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go into, long belabored detail on this, but I'll give the high point. So in truth, and this is by far the hardest thing in the world that's ever happened to me. I had to make a decision that was the hardest. And even today, as hard as the fallout from the decision's been, I still wouldn't take it back because that decision put me where I am today. So I worked for Cisco, and so did my dad. And in 2009, I was on a backpacking trip in the boundary waters, and on my way home, and on my way home, got a call, from Dad, and he's like, "Hey, where you at?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm just leaving Ely, Minnesota. I'll be home later tonight. Been out backpacking in the backcountry for a few days." And he's like, "Well, I need to see you in the morning. I need to talk to you." And it was a little more somber than that. And I was like, "All right," we set it up. I hung up.
And is that normal for him to do that kind of thing?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, right away, as I'm, I got like 6-7 hours to drive home, and I'm going through my head. And I'm like, "All right, what the hell did you do?"
Yeah. What have I done?
Yeah.
What do I need to be apologizing for?
Yeah. This is not normal. Well, anyway, long story short, I get home, meet him the next morning, and come to find out that something happened. He had been suspended by senior management. He was a senior manager, but he was on suspension, and he felt within a day or two that they were going to let him go. He had been suspended for, I think, a week, and I did not know that. Although I had been gone for part of that, so there's probably a reason I didn't know. But during the time that I was gone, and he was looking at the fact that he thought he was going to be let go, he got proactive, and he reached out to the company that we competed with, and he started negotiating to go to work for them. And he negotiated taking me with him before he talked to me. So that's what he laid on me that morning. And I mean, in that morning, what are you going to do? Your dad is telling you he's going to lose his job, and he wants you to go with him to this new company, and you're going to work together, and there's a whole story to it. And it's like you're too shell shocked to do anything but sort of operate off of what has been wired into you, right? And it's your dad. So I said, okay. That was a Friday. And that day after I left where we had met, I called my direct supervisor at Cisco and resigned, quit. No notice, nothing. Monday, we went to the competitor. Human resources began onboarding. And I had already, through the weekend, after I had more time to sort of grasp the gravity of what was happening and sort of weigh out, ramifications for me, because again, at that time I was, I think mid-30s, because it was 2009. I'm looking at like, man, I got 25, 30 years left here of work. He's got 5. This is a huge change for me. Not, in my opinion, not as significant for him, because he's on his way out. He's going to be done soon.
Yeah.
Not to mention, the thing I was struggling with the most was the platform that he'd been with the company 30 years. And the thing that was hardest for me was that he had operated as a leader on a platform of family and loyalty. And over the 30 years of people working for him, again, this is in a very high pressured sales environment, we had people who were part of the quote family try to leave to go to work for that competitor themselves. And they got talked back into the family based on loyalty and family, right?
Yeah.
So I really struggled with that, because I thought, at the end of the day, when we go to work for this company, we're in a profession, against sales, but it was 100% commission. So if we start competing directly the following week with the company that we've served for 30 years, the people that are going to pay the price, it's not the people in Houston, Texas, the people who don't know us. It's the people who've been dedicated to us themselves for the entire time that I had lived, that he had been part of the company. It's like,
Yeah.
That's who's going to suffer, because if you take sales from them up here, that's their commissions. That's
Right.
their. So anyway, Monday, went to get onboarded, and when I went back to the hotel room that night, I knew, because we were supposed to go finish Tuesday, I knew I wasn't going back Tuesday. I couldn't do it. I just could not live with it. I could not, it just felt like every premise I had raised on and worked for had been it's like, just kidding. We didn't mean any of that.
Yeah.
So I walked into the hotel room on that Tuesday morning, and I had to tell my mom and my dad were both there. And I said, I'm not going back. By far the most gut-wrenching, I can't even tell you what it was like. It was brutal.
Yeah.
But I left. And then the twist in the story is went back to work for Cisco, and worked, unfortunately, head to head against my father for 3 years.
Really?
We were opposing regional managers in the same district, going head to head. And, I'll tell you, we have maybe talked twice since that day when I didn't go back.
Really?
And that's tough.
Yeah.
That is tough. But you know what? It was a choice. My life would be completely different today if I didn't do that, and there would be a lot of people's lives that would be different with it. I still feel today that in the framework of serving a greater good, it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
We could have worked together very well, and spent 5 years together, essentially undoing everything that we had worked to do for 30. That's not the legacy I wanted to leave.
Yeah.
So
wow,
that's the hard thing. I mean, when you sent me the question, as soon as I saw it, I was like, well, I already know what the answer to that is.
There it is, right there.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing, man. That's I mean, anytime you involve family, right? It's a vulnerable, close to home thing. So I personally I have a healthy family life growing up, and I do now, but the relationship with my dad was never like very emotional. It's super logical, disciplined, rigid, structured. And so relationships between father, son, father, daughter, and like a father's impact is really significant to me. And so I'm listening to you say that, like, man, your dad, like, it's your dad, And I can't imagine what that's like to, it sounded like, because it sounds like, leading up to that, you had a pretty close relationship. I mean, you guys worked together in the same company.
Yeah, it wasn't a perfect relationship, like any, it had its moments. It was strained. I mean, we were not strained at it was on and off through time strained. He raised me.
Yeah.
Okay. We're very much wired the same way. And that's why at times we would, butt heads. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing. I mean, I have the same relationship at times, with my boys, that I'm raising them to be independent, free, strong thinkers. And sometimes that brings us to blows.
Yeah.
I I don't know that he'll ever see it this way, but I feel like in the decision that I made, that I did honor everything that he had taught me for 35 years. I truly do feel that way.
Yeah.
It's just that it was really an odd spot to get put in. I mean, he didn't have to ever put me in that spot, honestly. He could have just, he could have negotiated his way out, and then we could have had a conversation about it. And the agreement could have been like, no matter, like, we know this is going to be hard, and no matter what happens, we're going to be together. Like, there were other alternatives, although at that time, I'm sure he probably felt there weren't.
Right. Yeah. So when you go back to that, that Friday meeting with your dad, because it sounds like, man, and it seems like I'm extrapolating out, but it sounds like you're like a all in kind of a person. So like your dad was like, hey, this is what we're doing. And you're like, all right. And then you quit, like you just quit, like right on the spot from this job that you had. Have you like played that back in your head? Like, this is what I should have done. This, like, what'd you learn from that 3-4 day window of time, and how quickly it moved, and the things that you did or didn't do? And like, let's say you found yourself in that exact same situation again, what would you do differently?
Nothing.
Really?
No, I wouldn't. Like I said, I still think, I wish, here, this is not realistic to say this. My answer would be, I wish it hadn't happened.
Yeah.
Right. I wish that the decision hadn't been forced, meaning, again, there were alternative ways to have played that out from his end. But nonetheless, it is what it is. And if you said, I can play this back to that day and you can make a different choice, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And again, I do feel that it was, I do feel like he'd raised me on a basis or a foundation of family and loyalty. That's what he preached for 30 years to me and every guy and woman who worked for him. And I followed the company line. It's just that it ended up being the company he wasn't working for anymore.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, like, when I'd worked through Cisco, and, I guess it's good to share this, because I can't be the only person that's ever ended up in this situation where they're, working with a family member, whether it's a parent or, whatever, uncle, aunt, whatever. There was, part of the deal here was, through my career with Cisco, it didn't matter what I did. Like, when I was named early, when I was early in my career, when I was named driver of the year, right away it was, he's not any good. It's his dad. He got the award because of his dad. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. So, I go back, put that award away. And that continued to play out. So when we had there's a performance matrix for delivery drivers, cases per hour, like how many cases could you deliver per hour? Every time the sheet would come out, every week for like a year, 2 years at a time, I'm at the top of the list. Oh, it's his dad, something about his dad, Dean this, Dean that. It's like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, just everything I did was always attributed to somebody else doing it for me.
Yeah.
Right? And I am, again, sure, people live in under these circumstances in different things they're doing, different jobs they might have, or just, within a family dynamic. That's not easy to hear. That's not like, I could have chose to react differently. I could have become bitter. I could have lashed out. I could have gotten angry about it. I could have taken it personally. But I never did. It's like, I was confident in what I was doing. I knew what I was doing. I knew what my ability was. And whether they wanted to acknowledge it or not, did not change my ability. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That was their issue. Even when I was eventually promoted, I was the first operations manager promoted to take on a district sales manager role with no previous sales experience. Okay. First time in company history it ever happened. Well, what do you think everybody said?
It was his dad.
It's his dad. He got the job because of his dad. I actually lost a friendship with the guy, a very good salesman, and at that time a friend, because he thought he was going to get the job. I ended up getting the job, and that was it. That friendship was gone. It was over. We never really talked again after that. Those are hard things to go through in life, because I think a lot of people who aren't, sure of themselves they're gonna feel like they did something wrong.
Right.
They're not gonna see that the issue is really on the other side of that. When I went into my first district sales meeting after being promoted as a district sales manager who had never sold anything, there was a salesman in the room. He looked at me across the table and he said, "You've never sold anything. How are you going to help me?"
Yeah, right.
and I was like, "Listen, man, I can remember it like it was yesterday." I'm like, "Listen, they did not hire me because I have all the answers. They hired me because I can get the answers. So you just let me know what you need and we will make it happen." And it's, some people might listen to that and be like, "Man, what a cocky son of a bitch." And maybe it is cocky, but I don't know. I think, maybe if you're going to be put into an environment or a situation where you don't have the perceived skill to do what you're being asked to do, you sure as the hell better be cocky, or how are you going to get anywhere,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think you could call it cockiness, or you could call it humility, and like, because what you said is like, I don't know the answer, but I'm gonna work to figure it out, and I think if you're put in a position where you don't know what you're doing, and you can have the humility to say, I don't know, but you're gonna put the work in to figure it out, then like, more power to you, right? Like, I think that's the best place to be.
I've really, that's really the way that I've approached everything in life. Is I'm always, a friend of mine, David Kate, who he used to live in the States here with us, and now he's over in Germany with his wife. But I've told him, we've talked about it before, because he kind of subscribes to the same line of thought, as kind of being sure to remind yourself every day that you're not an expert in anything. You haven't figured it all out. There's a lot you don't know. You just don't know what it is.
Yep.
Right. So it's like every day is a new opportunity to be surprised by, "Oh, wow, I didn't know that. And now I do."
Right.
And it's just, I don't know, it makes every day exciting to get up and get after, because you just know shit is gonna, if you're getting out of your comfort zone, there is absolutely no doubt you're going to run into stuff on a daily basis that you don't know how to do or react to. It's going to be very informative, and you're going to learn from it.
Yeah. And that's the humility that, like, when you have the humility in the midst of the uncomfortableness, you learn, right? I think like when you've got the cockiness, you just kind of like will your way through it. But you're not agile or nimble and willing to adjust. You just are trying to like steamroll through something, and eventually you're going to run out of energy. But if you can have the humbleness to adjust your path or change the way you're approaching it, like, you just have a longer runway at the end of the day, and you can get more done.
Yeah. Even, in the restaurant business, well, with like, this is true in any business, but, in the restaurant business, there's obviously a lot of strong personalities, like for me as a young mid-30s district sales manager, who even, they knew the history. They knew that my dad had been let go. He went to work for Reinhardt. They knew I stayed and competed against him. There were some of them who felt that that was the ultimate dishonor of my father. And so they knew that. They knew that I hadn't sold before. And, you know, they'd been running their restaurant 30 years, and they'd have the same kind of take. Like when I'd go in with a sales rep to sit down at the table and talk to them about their business and how we can help them. I mean, their first question is like, how the hell are you going to help me?
Yeah.
You've never even done what the guy that you're supervising has done. How can you help me? And it was just, it was the same response that I had for the sales rep. It's like, listen, it doesn't take a lot of skill to come in here and ask you questions, maybe even some you haven't asked yourself, and then collaboratively working through and finding the answers to those questions that are going to help your business. Like,
Right.
I don't feel like I need 20 years of sales background to come in and ask you questions that are genuinely interested in just helping you be better. Right.
Yeah.
It really just takes an interest in you and seeing you succeed.
Right.
It's a simple formula.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
need
It
to
doesn't
know
have
what,
to be complicated.
no, I don't need to know what the cost of a case of iceberg lettuce is. You know, it's immaterial. So
Yeah.
I think
Do you
sometimes
know?
we overcomplicate sometimes what it takes to be successful with people.
Yeah. I mean, it's a, you know, if I was trying to simplify it, it is a genuine care for the other person and a willingness to listen, to like understand what those things are that they need, right? It's a servant posture.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the Monday, or no, the Tuesday morning in the hotel. When you, and I'm not asking you to like say what you said. I couldn't even tell you. So I'm not asking you to fill that in, but I am curious about the relationship with your mom, because your mom was there. And, you know, she in that instance got put, I'm sure, in a really hard place of like, well, I'm married, but this is my son. Like, what's your relationship like with your mom? What was that like going through that? If you can share it, I mean, maybe you can't, but.
No, I don't mind sharing, because I mean, the whole idea here is to share experiences to help other people, right?
Yeah.
Well, the relationship with my mom today is in the same place that my relationship with my dad is. You know, you got to keep in mind, and I have not. There's been times in the past where I was not as at peace with the way things are today. I haven't always been at this point with it, but I can honestly, kind of like how I've been explaining to you, or we were talking about doing hard things, and how it's almost like I feel you have to be able to not only see like this do hard things or whatever it is you want to believe in and push, you have to be able to see the oppositional position to it, like, you know, the opposing truth of doing hard things. So whereas I felt like I had my position and what I did made sense, I need to be able to see his position, their position, and why they thought what he had tried to do made sense. And I think the thing they remember is my parents, that it's old school, and the old school thought was there is just a line in the sand, and you don't turn your back on family. Not almost. You don't turn your back on family, regardless of what family does. That to me is problematic, because I mean, that's how we actually end up sort of where we are right now in the world, where if people can get away with things and do things, and you've got to maintain your allegiance no matter what it is, there's a problem, because now there's no character ethic, there's no character rules. And I think it just turns into the Wild West. So, you know, she fell in line with my dad, and you know what? I love my parents. I'm glad she did. You know, last thing that I would have wanted out of it would be that they're not together.
Right.
So as painful as it is, there is, I guess, some satisfaction in knowing they're together. I know that they're traveling all over the place. I know they're making the most of it. My dad is still working.
Really?
Yeah, in a restaurant. He's in a restaurant. He's doing what he loves. You know, how could I ask for anything more? I really can't.
Yeah. Well, in the current situation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the hard thing is knowing, like, not trying to say one is harder than the other. When you lose a family member, we just lost a grandmother here recently. That's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody passes on and they're no longer with us. It's very difficult, and there's a period of grieving. There's times where it's like they're gone, but I know they're not.
Yeah.
That's hard,
Yeah.
because it's one thing if somebody passes on and you have to move on because they're gone.
Right.
Different when you're like, but they're not gone yet. They're gone,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That can get a little tricky to navigate, but
Yeah. I've got two other questions. So off of that, like they're gone, but they're not gone. Is there a tension in you that exists at any point in the years that have passed since, of like, I want to reconcile this, or like this is just the way it is, and kind of letting like it be until they come and like, what is there a tension there at all for you?
I don't remember how far into it we were, but early on I was like, because I've got kids,
Yeah.
and they see one of the kids, but they don't see the other one. That's really,
Your parents?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's pretty tough to navigate. I knew where he was one day. I don't remember how I found out. I think one of the salespeople happened to mention that they saw him, at one of the accounts. So it was an hour and a half away from Marquette. And I was like, fuck it. I'm driving down there and I'm going to find where he is. And I'm going to sit out in the parking lot until he comes out. We got to talk this out. Like this, this is not good.
Yeah.
That conversation, I don't remember what was said, but I know it was clear in the parking lot that day. He wasn't given any ground. Like what I had done was just what I had done. And, it's basically you made your bed, sleep in it. And it was like, okay.
Yeah.
So, I gave it that go. If something happened and that opportunity presented itself that we could be together again, better late than never.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if that'll happen.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of, sounds like, to your point, if some other circumstance changes, his heart specifically, because it sounds like there's a desire on your end to like have a relationship with him again. And it's like, is it there on the other side?
Yeah. And I would do it. There's so much time has passed. I mean, I'm not even angry. I'm not saying that he is. Like, it's so much time has passed. I wouldn't even know what to be mad about anymore. At this point, it's just like, listen, you got a 19-year-old grandson, you got a 12-year-old grandson, you have a son, you have a daughter-in-law. We're on the clock here. let's just fucking figure it out. And but then again, at the same time, if it doesn't, the thing I would say to people is sometimes you need to, because I think that for some people end up in this spot and it just destroys them.
Yeah.
Because they live with regret or sense of loss. And in the same way that I said it was great that they stay together, and I'm glad my parents are happy and enjoying their retirement to its fullest while my dad's still working.
Yeah.
Also it wouldn't have been any good if I just sit here and beat myself up about the whole thing and just go into a spiral, right?
Yep. Right.
And then 906 Adventure Team doesn't exist. The events don't exist. All the people that we're reaching across the country aren't reached. I mean, sometimes here's what I'll tell you. I've got this little pie chart.
Yeah.
And I have a slice on it, right? And inside the slice, it says comfort zone. And it's like a quarter of the pie.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the pie is just called the FU zone.
Okay.
And what that means is by F you, it's not like, hey, F you. It is to say that most of life is in the FU zone, meaning things are fucked up. They don't always make sense.
Yeah.
Shit happens that you wish didn't happen. Things you do things you wish you could undo. People do things to you wish they didn't do, right? That's all happening in the FU zone. And the more that you can become comfortable outside the comfort zone and make the FU zone your home, the more resilient you're going to be and the greater things you're going to do. Because that shit happens. It's not happening in your comfort zone.
Right.
It's happening in the FU zone. When I was in retail, I worked in some stores where literally 200 people reported to the store management. So I've managed teams as big as 200. I've managed teams as small, I guess, as 3 or just down to 1, being myself.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that I've always seen plague people is they get hung up on things that aren't fair. They get hung up on things that they see other people doing or getting, and they're like, well, that's fucked up. I did this, this, and this, and then Bill got that. I mean, what the fuck? Right?
Yep.
That's the FU zone. Like, you need to be able, maybe you did a better job than Bill. And maybe Bill's kissing ass and he's got the wool pulled over somebody's eyes. That's fucked up. Yep, it is. Sometimes life is.
Mm-hmm.
You still need to figure out how to be successful and how to overcome it.
Right.
Sitting and bitching about it, or retracting into a comfort zone, is doing you no good.
Yeah. It's like, how do you turn, because you got your pie, right? And I think what's interesting is it's not a static image in my mind. Like, it's not, that pie doesn't stay a quarter and then 3/4. If you're not growing, your comfort zone is going to get taken, shrunk, and everything's just going to descend on you eventually, right? Yeah. Or you can kind of grow your comfort zone by growing your resilience. And it's like, which way are the lines moving? Are they going out as you press in and you embrace some of that stuff? Or as you kind of curl up and pretend like it's not there and you don't push yourself, like, is it slowly taking over your life? And which way? Like, there is no static. You don't get to be in the middle. Like, you're either growing or you're diminishing.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're either moving forward or you're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, even a bad move is still a move.
Yep.
Right.
Well,
sometimes
you're gonna learn.
That's right. A step back, it's still a step, and you can still move forward from that step back.
Right. Absolutely. So you kind of touched on it. I wanted to ask really quickly, like, with your kids, the impact that's had on your family and how you've navigated that. Like, any specific approach you've taken?
We've been open about it. We've been transparent about it, not gone into obviously a lot of details about it. But we've not tried to hide it. And because, the things that we try to hide end up, right, it kind of turns into cancer. Yeah. And it just, it ends up becoming a bigger negative because it infects things. So there's conversation about it. There's just always, like, the dialogue in our house is always very, I don't know what the word is, pragmatic. We just call it what it is. It's like, yeah, this isn't ideal. This isn't maybe the normal family experience. But we are going to make the best of it, and we can choose to have it define us in a negative way, or we can overcome it. It's a choice. Yeah. And the boys have been really, I mean, Stacy does a great job with them. Her parents are very active in their life, and they've been Kathy and Gary have been just amazing. The kids are totally good.
Yeah.
Totally good.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just honest conversation.
Yeah. Yes. I would say always have honest conversation with your kids about stuff. Don't sugarcoat it. I mean, keep it age appropriate, but don't sugarcoat it. Also, I mean, there's no reason to sit in front of the kids and be slinging shade at grandma and grandpa. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. Here's what happened. It's not ideal. Move on.
Yep. Ask questions if you got them.
Yeah.
And we'll do our best to answer them. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Give them the resources to process it. So,
Yeah.
so you've given a decent amount of advice kind of sprinkled in as you've been talking. But is there anything like somebody's in the middle of their own hard season right now, listening to this, and maybe it's the same. Maybe it's like a strained relationship with a parent or some other family member, but maybe it's something totally different. Like what's one piece of advice that you would have for somebody in a hard season?
I'm gonna tie this back to Margie Gessick because
Okay.
this is the truth. Margie Gessick is hard, life is hard, right?
Yep.
So we were at Margie camp this year. I was talking to Jan Rubel. Jan was one of the coaches. Jan's done the event a bunch of times. He's buckled. He's one of the very few elite people that have buckled. And we were sort of having this conversation about how there's just this wide range of elites, all the way to people who might have pulled their bike out of the shed on Friday to ride the hardest mountain bike race in the country on Saturday.
Yeah.
And how the people underneath the elites or here, everybody, whether you're in the Margie Gessick or you're at the mall next to a bunch of people or at Target or at Walmart or at work, everybody has a tendency when the weight of the world's on them to think that they've got it the hardest, they're suffering the hardest, and everybody else's life is just fucking roses. And that, what I would say that we said at Margie camp, when we were talking to people and we were saying, listen, at the end of the day, whether you're elite or the guy who, signed up and hasn't trained a single day and now you're going to try to survive tomorrow, like you don't even care if you finish, you just don't want to die.
Right.
All of those people in that spectrum, we're all fucked. Every one of us. Like when you're out there, you need to remember, and this is what should hopefully break barriers and bring people together. No matter how fucked you're feeling, that guy next to you, he's that fucked too. Or that woman, she's fucked too. We're all going through the same stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that if you can accept that and see that you're not alone in it, I personally think that is the beginning, because it gives you sort of a brotherhood or a sisterhood or just, a human connection. Like this is just all hard shit that we need to get through. And really what you need to do is reach out to people, surround yourself with good people that'll get you through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't go it alone.
You can't
Don't
go
it alone.
You can't.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, you can try, and that probably doesn't end well.
No,
it does not. In fact, I had written down here, because I saw that question. I had written down, the first thing I wrote down is, you're not alone.
Yeah. Well, you just did it. You didn't read it, but that was what came out of you naturally, right? So
yeah, you're not alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think, like you talked about, stuff that's hidden becomes cancerous. It can kind of creep in, and there's like an element of, I think, when people are in difficult things, some of it's self-inflicted and some of it's not, but it's regardless, it feels like a moment of weakness a lot of times, like I'm not capable, or this thing's overcoming me, or whatever the narrative is in people's minds.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like hiding that can happen because you don't want to show the weakness, you don't want to show fragility, and as a result, there's nobody available to help you because they don't know you're in it. And then two, you think you're the only one going through it. But when you start talking about it, you find out really quickly, oh my gosh, there's like 100 other people that have been in this situation. And like, I'm not alone. And I have somebody I can count on. And somebody's been through this and it ends. Like that's what I love about this podcast, is like, this allows that narrative that people have of like, I'm the only one, to break really quickly, right? Because they'll hear it.
So. Yeah, if I reference back to the races, so we're very active with the events on Facebook.
Yeah,
and there's two groups. Crusher has a private group on Facebook, and Margie Gessick has a private group on Facebook. What you're talking about here, what we're talking about with you not being alone and sharing vulnerability and stories, the community that we have, which is literally thousands of people right now. It's amazing to sit in after the events, read the stories all the self-doubt that they went into the event with. I mean, it is mind-blowing then how, as they're sharing their stories, and then other people read them and they're like, well, shit, that woman looks just like me. Like her life, you know, is just like mine. And look at what she's doing. And she feels just like me. And there's just that human connection.
Yeah.
And people sharing that then helps them get over and through that. And it helps them do some just incredibly amazing things that they never thought they could do.
That's so cool that you guys are able to facilitate that for people too.
Yeah, it's what we should be doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So last question for you, Todd, before we wrap up, and I ask everybody this, but what's a hard thing that you're in the middle of right now?
The hard thing we're in the middle of right now is we actually didn't touch on it a bunch, but the whole reason the nonprofit was started was to serve children. And we have now 9 youth adventure teams across the Midwest, so in 3 states.
Yeah.
We're teaching kids how to do hard things and get out of their comfort zone and all the things we talked about today.
Yeah.
We're applying these lessons in age appropriate ways to youth in 9 communities. And the hardest thing right now in front of us is meeting the demand.
Really?
Meeting the demand and the need. We've got a couple doctors on our on our board of directors. We regularly speak to people in the education system. You know, whether we're talking about tech and the impact that phones and, you know, Instagram and Facebook and all this stuff is having on kids, or if you just get down and talk about like, okay, this pandemic has, you know, reduced childhood play and physical activity by whatever, 30-40%. The statistics aren't good right now.
Yeah.
So this youth adventure team model that we have, which is non-competitive, we're not teaching kids to compete against each other. We're teaching them to compete against themselves. It's the mantra is you versus you, and you're going to be with 10 other kids following that same framework and that same growth mindset. And since we're not pitting them against each other and success isn't finite, because all you got to do is be your best and beat your best day, it is amazing the impact it's having for those kids, the families, the volunteers, and the communities that it's in.
Yeah.
We started then in 14. It was me and 5 kids. And this year we are in 9 communities. We had 300 volunteer leaders and 700 kids.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah. It's just, how do you grow? How do you scale and not break it?
I'm sure you'll break it at some point, and then you just got to be able to fix it real quick. So
yeah, probably.
Yeah. Oh man. Wow. Well, for anybody that's listening to this and you know, maybe they've never heard of 906 Adventures, or maybe something you said really, you know, struck a chord with them and they're curious, they've got questions, they want to get involved, whatever it is, like, how do people get in touch with you, follow what you're doing and everything that's involved with 906?
You know, we're on Facebook. They could look up 906 Adventure Team. We have a website. You could go to 906adventureteam.com. They could also just reach out to me. My email is todd@906adventureteam.com. And I'm
2 Ds.
2 Ds. Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to field any questions, have any conversations at any time. I'm accessible pretty much around the clock.
Awesome. Yeah, man. Well, hey, I'll just say it's been really fun talking to you. I love what you guys are doing, that you're working with kids, that you're pushing people out of their comfort zones, that you're facilitating opportunities for growth, and you know, that it's growing, that like that actually is making a difference in people's lives is really cool. So thanks for doing all that. I mean, very few people are. And so thank you for serving your community well.
Yeah. Well, thanks for giving me a chance to talk about it. And, you know, hopefully we end up, somebody hears this and they're like, hey, we need an adventure team in our community, and they reach out, maybe we can make it happen. Yeah, that'd be incredible. And if that does happen, I want to know about it. That'd be pretty cool. Yes, I will make sure that you do. Cool.
Well, Todd, man, thanks again for coming on. It was awesome to hear your story.
Thank you very much.